this is going to be brought up in ACC conference meetings for sure. I don't give a dang what anybody says. What is up, everybody? It is Jake with Master Football, back at it again. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on all things EA college football and watch plenty of college football videos, subscribe to this channel right now. I also do some Madden and Pro videos as well. Please subscribe. Hit that red subscribe button. It's free to you. Helps the channel out a lot. Okay, quest for 1K. Doesn't cost you anything. All it's going to cost you is being up to date on everything EA college football and getting plenty of college football videos as well. Remember, also like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate all that stuff. Without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, guys, so here we are. And I've been talking about the Pac-12 recently for a multitude of reasons, okay? Talking about their, losing USC and UCLA. And then we talk about how the fact that they've actually definitely, all those other programs in the league have definitely held up their end of the bargain. Oregon State, especially. Oregon State's done a good job. Arizona's already won 2 games, and they were on 1 game last season. They're definitely trying to rebuild their status as a league. I know that we won't talk about Arizona State, and we know that Cal and Stanford are also struggling too. And with all of that, I want to make sure we're clear about something, because George Kliavkoff is kind of, how do I say it? He's kind of acting like a bitter ex-girlfriend or a bitter ex-boyfriend. I'll show you why. In the letter, Pac-12's George Kliavkoff cites significant financial, mental health concerns on UCLA move to the Big Ten. So he's in this article, he's basically going to say, oh, there's a significant amount of things here. No, it's not. Trust me, I know that University of the California, Los Angeles, they're smart enough to understand. They weighed all of the options in and out. This is definitely worth it. This just seems like he's trying to see if he can save UCLA, because you have to remember that USC is already going. USC makes, they're a big time money generator, and they're a private institution, as opposed to UCLA. It looks like they have a couple more people with their hands in the pot. I don't think he's going to save them. Now, I will say this. It looks like, the girlfriend who is leaving UCLA is bailing. However, he could gain a harem in one way. So we've heard about this before, but now again, we have confirmed reports that the UNC brass discussed potential ACC Pac-12 super conference per report. We come down here and check out this article from SI.com. According to a report from Andrew Carter of the News and Observer, university leadership at North Carolina floated the idea of a super conference between the ACC and the Pac-12 amidst the decision by USC and UCLA this summer to spurn the conference, the Pac-12, for the Big Ten beginning the summer of 2024. The News Observer obtained text messages amongst UNC brass via a public records request as schools' decision makers discussed the future of the Tar Heels athletic program. Should we explore a partnership with the Big 12 or the Pac-12? They also mentioned the Big 12 there. UNC athletic director Bubba Cunningham texted University Chancellor Kevin Gikiewicz. We could have a super conference both athletically and academically. You think about that from an academic perspective: UW, Stanford, Cal, Duke, Georgia Tech, UNC, Virginia, a lot of high-profile universities. Miami is trying to get to that AAU status as well. Probably would need to be called the Atlantic Pacific Athletic Conference, the APAC. It sounds like a super PAC and like political things. Maybe that's crazy, but it would get us a better TV deal. It would maybe be worth considering, he continued. We need to think about what outcomes we want. What are our priorities? Do we want to maintain all teams in the ACC? Is this a new league? Do we want to have the same number of teams at each school? Should we play a national schedule or a regional schedule? Cunningham questioned. A big one there. And I think a lot of people don't realize this. This isn't standard operating procedure here, but this is a big one here. Do we want to maintain all the teams in the ACC? Think about that situation right there. There are 14 teams in the ACC right now. Do we want to maintain all the teams in the ACC? This is coming from University Chancellor Kevin Gikiewicz. Get mad at me for saying it the wrong way. That's important. So UNC is sitting there thinking like, do we really need Syracuse and Louisville and Wake Forest? Do we really need those guys? Like, is that really going to help? Do we really need Boston College? That's what that is hinting at. That's a huge one. First of all, this is going to be brought up in ACC conference meetings for sure. I don't give a dang what anybody says. That right there, that statement is ginormous. We're thinking about kicking teams out. Whoa. With the future of college athletics, especially football, in a state of transition and uncertainty, the ACC clearly refuses to stand idly by. There is no doubt that similar discussions to those happening at North Carolina are happening in athletic departments across the ACC as schools wonder what's next. So, for the longest time, the ACC grant of rights. Now remember here, Texas and Oklahoma, Texas, which has all the power and ammunition in the world, still cannot get out of their grant of rights situation. And it's a grant of rights that ends much earlier, ends about 2025, as opposed to the 2030s like the ACC. They still can't get out of theirs. So now we're sitting here thinking that, oh, well, all these schools in the ACC aren't going to be able to leave their conference because Texas can't leave an easier to leave grant of rights situation themselves. That being said, though, if they decide to kind of torpedo the league or have some sort of merger or add 10 minus 4, go from there, that'd be crazy. That'd be a cool situation in some ways, because what you could do is that, let's just say you have 10 in the Pac-12, and then you have 14, and you jettison 4. Then you have 10 and 10. You play a 9-game conference schedule, all 9 teams, and then the winner of those games plays each other in the conference championship. That would be a really, really cool situation. Now, I know we've seen this before, and it wasn't pretty. Does anybody here remember the alliance? The ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12 on CFP vote scheduling and what comes next. This was a big war between Fox and ESPN to prevent ESPN from getting an automatic extension with the college football playoff. So they wanted to make sure that they joined together and they were voting kind of as a block there. They prevented the college football expansion. They did a couple different things like that. Now, that being said, eventually the Big Ten went within the alliance and took the 2 biggest brands, USC and UCLA, over to them. 2 biggest brands they could have. I understand that the ACC has a lot of brands, but they're locked into the 2030s with their deal. But yeah, I mean, we've seen this before, but up until it's in writing, this was not in writing. Up until it is in writing, it's all hypothetical. And it would be across the country. So if you look at this right here, this is what it looks like. Now we understand these 2 teams right here, USC and UCLA, would be out, and then would be the remainder of these teams here, and then the remainder of these teams here. Boom. Boulder, Colorado to Louisville, Kentucky, only 1,100 miles one way. So again, I think the questions that they were asking there was, do we want this to be kind of regional? Do we want it to jettison 4 teams? And again, I'm just throwing that number 4 out there. That hasn't been confirmed by anybody. Do we want to go 10, 9-game conference schedule, have a championship? Do we want to potentially have it to where like we have a groups in there? So we'll have like a center group, we'll have a East Coast group, we'll have West Coast group, or we'll have like maybe 2 groups out in the ACC land, 2 groups out in the Pac-12 land, cut them up into 5 different schools, play those games, and just kind of go around from there. There's a lot of different things they would have to decide. Ultimately, remember here, this comes down to whatever CBS, Amazon Prime, Fox, and ESPN want to offer, because if they like that option, this could be a really cool conference thing. And I think a big reason why they want to address this is because if you look at this right here, this is where, man, I think a big aspect between college football is that college football week 1, especially week 0 and week 1, are super, super cool. College football week 2 and 3 and 4, they're not cool. I actually like a lot of those games, but they definitely, the high profile matchups kind of drop off. And the reason why is because you're getting into the softer part of your non-conference schedule. Conference schedules typically start in October. Some of them start a little bit earlier, but you don't get into the brunt of your conference schedule until October and November. But you see these games here. I mean, a couple of these are good games. West Virginia and Virginia Tech. West Virginia was worried. West Virginia was worried when they lost to Kansas. Looks like Kansas might be the real deal. West Virginia goes to Blacksburg and wins that game. But then you see the rest of these games here. Georgia plays Kent State. Good for you. Maryland and Michigan play. Michigan is favored by 17. Clemson and Wake Forest is a good game. It's still a 7-point favorite. That's a pretty big line there. I am looking forward to see what happens with this Baylor and Iowa State game. Iowa State is favored by 2.5. Missouri and Auburn is a conference game. TCU and SMU battle for the Iron Skillet is a 2-point game. This will be a good game to watch. Duke and Kansas, baby, undefeated. You see a couple of games here. UCLA, Colorado, 3-0 versus 0-3. That's not going to be a great game. I apologize. Florida, Tennessee, conference game. Texas Tech, Texas is a conference game. And we see UNC and North Carolina is technically not a conference game, but I mean, that's technically a non-conference game between a team that has an agreement with the conference to play a certain amount of games. 1.5-point favorites, so that's going to be an interesting game to watch. Minnesota is favored by 3 on the road at Michigan State. What else do we have here? James Madison, App State. North Texas, Memphis. There's just not as many of those high-profile non-conference matchups down here to go through because, like you said, you have to wait for a couple weeks to get them into conference. We see here we have Rice and Houston playing for, I believe, the Mayor's Cup, the Governor's Cup. I don't know exactly what that is. Arkansas, Texas A&M is going to be in Jerry World, and that is a conference game, though. So you see the fact that there's not as many high-profile matchups. Wisconsin and Ohio State. Ohio State's favored by 19. New Mexico's playing LSU. Good for you, LSU. So yeah, I mean, it's just a big drop-off in conference games out there. I do know that USC and Oregon State is a big-time game that I'm looking forward to. But you can definitely tell there's an issue with that because, again, what they want to have is they want to have more high-profile matchups. That's the reason why all these bigger conferences are getting to 16 teams. They're going to have 9-game conference schedules, going to have, different pods and this and that, making more big-time matchups because that's what the TV partners want. Now, I know Joel Klatt has a way through this himself. Let's check through Joel Klatt. Joel Klatt here on cornhuskerswire.usatoday.com. He fixes non-conference scheduling in college football. I actually really liked some of the ideas here. He had 3 main goals from this, the changes that he is suggesting here to increase the competitive intensity in inventory, increase parity, and increase revenue. First of all, mandate non-conference games. That will be weird if you only have 8 conference. I think that the Conference USA might have some issues with that because for raw numbers, but they could still add a team potentially. But again, what would happen here is that there would be a couple different things here. It goes to home field advantage and this and that. But the big things that he has is the blind draw. So similar to the NFL, if you finish first place in your division one season, the next season you have your 17-game season. And then you have your 6 in division. You have 4 against one division, 4 against another. So that's 8. 8 plus 6 is 14. You have 3 other games. You play 3 other first place teams in other divisions out there. So what would happen is Alabama doesn't get to schedule Austin Peay. I know they scheduled Texas. Good for them. They've played their 3rd non-conference road game that they've won in the 16 years that Nick Saban has been there. Again, I repeat, they've only played 3 non-conference road games since Nick Saban has been there. Getting more of those guys. I mean, that was a great game to watch that, but you kind of have to twist Texas's arm, or it just kind of has to happen, every once in a while. Whereas this situation, it will be scheduled by a committee. So the blind draw, you would have a blind draw where Texas might have to play Utah, where Florida might have to play Michigan State, where, Ohio State might have to play, Arizona State. Maybe that might be a good example. Ohio State has to play Oregon. Something like that would be really, really cool, where it just kind of the CFP committee would set that up. That's what he even mentioned here. But you could see the fact that there's definitely there's a desire for that out there, whether or not it's going to be, expanding the conference, whether or not it's going to be expanding the playoff, whether or not it's going to be a situation where the Pac-12 and ACC combine to form a super league, whether or not, the Big 10 wants to get to 24 teams, whether or not we want to get to the point to where we have your non-conference schedule is decided by the CFP. You can definitely tell that, especially weeks 1 through week 4, maybe week 5, they want to address that to make sure that revenue and that, not necessarily that revenue, but that inventory can be a much better product on the field because week 1's awesome. And then week 2 and 3, there's so many teams playing, but very few of those high profile matchups that you absolutely have to watch. So that's my assessment of the situation right there. I personally think, first of all, the biggest thing that he said there was the jettisoning. It was like, do we want to move away from certain teams right there? That was the big thing that they said right there that we have to kind of go through. But man, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, let me know your thoughts about this whole situation. Do you believe in the alliance? Do you not? Get in the comments right now and let me know. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys later. I am out.